How does our call to serve come to birth and develop? On today's program, our guest will share how the trials and challenges he faced in his 20s as he battled with cancer and holding on to his faith in God brought to birth a ministry that is now bringing hope to others fighting with cancer. We'll also meet some of the former Chicago Bears players who have joined in his efforts. Stay tuned to hear more about this inspirational ministry. I've got some former Chicago Bears players with me, and also I've got Phil from Phil's Friends here. So Phil Zielke, who's from Phil's Friends, and he's going to talk about that. And Phil was with us once before, and we're glad to have you back. And Ray McElroy. And I'm not going to give your secret away, so you know, when it's your turn to talk, you can tell everybody who you are and what you do. And we've got Desmond Clark at the end there, who appears to be the jokester in the group, but we're excited that he's with us. Both of these guys were former Bears players. And so what we want to do is want to get right into your stories and hear about who you are, because I know that everyone is intrigued. And so we're going to start with you, Desmond, and we're going to put you on the spot.
You're going to throw a curveball.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you, right. I'm not very good at that.
I don't know, it just broke pretty hard right there. Yeah.
But you should be able to catch it from what I understand.
I got it. I got it.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Lakeland, Florida. You know, didn't come up in a church family where we always went to church all the time, and but we always had that spiritual side to the family. Although we wasn't in the church, Mom was always that good moral character, and she was a very, very spiritual lady. So she set the example for us morally how we should be. But I grew up in a single-parent home, and the story that that gets told the most is my story about my relationship with my father, former drug addict. I chased my father around town from drug house to drug house to drug house, witnessing, I mean, some things that kids shouldn't witness growing up. And as I was growing up, not coming from that church background, I always knew what I was supposed to be doing. I always knew how I should be living, but I was never living that way, and I never wanted to quite exhibit that, because to me it felt like if you are walking that Christian life, you wasn't cool, you wasn't the it guy. And throughout high school, throughout college, although I think I was a pretty moral guy, I didn't have that personal relationship with Jesus. I always thought that I was doing okay, I was good. I didn't curse when I was in high school, didn't curse when I was in college. I started letting a few fly when I got to the NFL, but as I grew older, I started to realize that God got me here, and looking back on everything that I went through, it was only God that got me here. He put people in my way, in my path to get me here. And as I started to look back, I felt God tugging on me, saying that you need to do something to give back, because someone did something to help you get here. And I think at that point, that's when I started to mature as a man and started to say, I need to start standing up. I need to start being an example for what God wants me to be.
Desmond, when you talk about your father and chasing him around from one place to another, I mean, talk about that a little bit. Like, what was that like?
Well, I always had a close bond with my father. Even though him and my mom separated and divorced when I was 7 years old, I believe, that bond never did break. And any chance that I had to be around my father, I was there. It like I said, got to the point that he was at drug house, but what he would tell me is come and find him. And I would go and find him, and I knew a group of houses that he would be in. from 5th Street to 10th Street, over on Texas Avenue. I still visualize these places. And like I say, some of the things that I've seen, I would be sitting with my father at just like a round table like this. You'll be the dope man, and it'd be 3 drug addicts right here, and it'd be little old me sitting here with a bunch of drugs on the table. And those are the kind of things that I seen when I was young. And
you remember that, right?
Oh yeah. I mean,
what was that like?
That wasn't the most dramatic thing. I mean, I've been there when people was getting shot at. And my mom would have killed me if she ever would have knew I was around any of that stuff.
She knows now.
She knows, and she's been knowing for a long time now. But that kind of stuff helped shape me as a man, because I knew which direction I didn't want to go.
Okay.
But I think the most dramatic thing that kind of happened was that bond, like I said, with my father was always tight. If my dad said, "Come, let's go," I came and I went. So it got to the point that I guess my dad got real comfortable with me being around that type of activity, that when he was alone and he wanted to get high, if I was there, you know, he would ask me to light his crack pipe for him.
Wow.
So that was the most...
So that wasn't a healthy role model.
But
yet there was
a
bond there with your dad.
And,
right?
you know, I would do it and I would think nothing of it, and he would just zone out and go wherever he went, and I would just exit stage left and leave him to be. But seeing that kind of stuff, you know, I could have been some of anywhere, just by the experiences that I had. I had an older brother that was selling drugs at the time, so I had some negative influences, but like I said, those influences were overpowered by the positive influences that I had in my life.
So that's what you would say then, like how did you escape that? And you're saying you escaped that because you had kind of a plethora of good role models.
I call it my J's.
Okay.
All of my coaches from middle school to high school. I had Coach Joyner, Coach Jackson, Coach Joe, and Coach Jones.
Wow.
My football and basketball coaches throughout middle school and high school. And I just recognized that maybe 3 months ago when I was speaking. I was like, all my coaches' last name ended with J's.
That's a book. I see a book right now.
But
the 4 J's or something.
Each of those guys gave me something that I could live with throughout life, and it wasn't necessarily biblical, but it helped get me to the point where I could recognize that it was God's will for those guys to be in my life, and they've given me principles that I still live by to this day. That Coach Joyner, he said, once you start, you couldn't finish. I tried to quit my football team. He came and he found me.
Okay.
And he told me to get in the car.
Wow.
You want to play football? They wanted me to play center. I didn't want to play center. I was a quarterback and running back throughout my days, but he wouldn't let me quit. Coach Jones, he always told us that he was going to make practice harder than the game, because if you prepare harder, and when it was time to perform, you always be ready.
Right.
And Coach Joe, I think, gave me my most important piece of advice as a man. He told me that my name and my word is all I have. And once I lose that, then I don't have anything.
Wow.
So, you know, looking back on it, I think God was sending them people in my life to help mold me as a man. And as I started to look back and as I started to grow as a man, I wasn't ashamed of being who I wanted to be. I figured out that you could talk God, be about God, and still be who you are, because He made you as an individual. And I really recognized I could still be the individual who I am. You know, before we came on, you know, I like to have fun. I like to live life. I like to be upbeat. And I always thought, before I became mature in what I'm and how I'm living now and the man that I am, that you had to walk a certain way. It was a dull type of lifestyle. You couldn't joke, you couldn't have fun, because that was a stereotype. But
legalism and
but it's nothing like that. I think once you find out what a relationship with Jesus Christ is all about, you're kind of free to be who you are. And we talked about earlier just some things that happen in life that now you're able to just keep going and not worry and just keep living, because you understand that you're in His will, so you don't have to worry about anything. Long as you're doing you know, the things that you're supposed to do, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And I want us to, at some point, to maybe talk a little bit about that, because you were playing for the Bears. You played for the Broncos prior to the Bears too, right? And so I do want us to talk a little bit about that and that experience, and because you're not right now, and I think it's really good for young folks out there who are aspiring to be athletes, which I think is a great thing. You know, I ran track. I know you talked about track and was a cross-country coach and all that. I think that's awesome. But thinking deeper about life and what happens if, right? And I'm going to want you to share a little bit, because you went through it. It wasn't the if, but the reality. So, but thank you for sharing all that. And right, you can still be this like masculine man and a real guy and still love Jesus, right?
Exactly.
Like I think about David, who was a warrior, he was a king. Like I think that was like, he was like a man's man, totally, completely. But this was a guy who cried out to God and who was a man after God's own heart. So it's good to hear that. Ray, let's hear a little bit of your story, because we're going to find out how y'all connect in a little while. But
well, Barb, thank you for allowing us to be here. I have a little bit different story. Unlike Desmond, I was born and raised in the church, and I'm from Chicago area. In fact, the church that I grew up in is not too far from the studio on the west side of Chicago in the North Lawndale community. It's called Stone Temple Baptist Church. Okay. And yeah, I was, my whole life was shaped around football. I mean, from my perspective. At 7 years old was the first time I saw NFL football on TV on the west side in my auntie's living room, third floor on Thanksgiving Day. I remember. Oh,
you remember it? Oh, whoa!
I was mesmerized when I saw the NFL for the first time on TV.
Do you remember your wife's birthday like that? I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. That's why I'm still married. But yeah, I saw it for the first time as a 7-year-old boy, and I was like, man, that's what I'm going to do. And it's one of the great things that helped shape some of the decisions that I made. Now, by no means was I perfect, but I had several obstacles standing in my way of going pro. You know, the first one was I wasn't as gifted of an athlete as Desmond was. The second major obstacle was my high school, Proviso West, where I attended high school, had a lousy football program while I was in high school. In 2 years of varsity football, we won 1 game. And so it was real hard thinking that you're going to get a school to recruit you to play college football, let alone go to the pros if you can't barely get out of high school. So I ended up going to a school called Eastern Illinois University. It's right in the center of basically a cornfield down in central Illinois. And I did not get recruited to play college football. I actually got recruited to run track in college. And it was a partial track scholarship. And they called me and it was like, we want you to come and run track for us. I was like, well, I want to play football. They said, well, okay, you can play football if you run track for us your first year. So I did.
You broke some records somewhere, right? Was it in high school or was it in college? Or you set some records?
Yeah, I still have my high school hurdle records. I was an all-state hurdler in high school. And I still hold those records.
Till today, right? You don't want to say for how long it's been, okay.
But they're still standing, and that's pretty cool to be able to take your kids back and be like, there go daddy.
Yeah, you know? Right.
So yeah, I was an all-state hurdler, and that's what they recruited me to come and run the 400 intermediate hurdles for Eastern Illinois University. And I said, well, I want to play football. I don't mind running track. I love track, but football is my heart. We'll let you run track. We'll let you play football if you run track for us your first year. And so I walked on to the football team my second year. And there may be somebody watching that you don't know what it means to walk on. That basically means while the football team is out there practicing, you literally walk on the field and be like, hey, can I play? That's what I had to do. Okay. And when I walked on to the team and it was time to hand out equipment for the first day of practice, you know what my jersey number was?
Tell us.
104. Barbara, you ever seen a football jersey with 3 numbers on it? No. Okay. Well,
I mean, that's just
No,
way
I
down
have
depth
not.
chart.
I like to joke.